the spot.
Call courtesy of NBC Sports Network. Scott Lawton with a deflection that gets in the back of the net for the game winner. Flyers survive a scare from the New York Islanders 4-3 in OT. Philadelphia now trailing in that Eastern Conference semifinal series 3-2. The Vancouver Canucks still in the hunt as well. The lone Canadian club left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, defeating the Vegas Golden Knights 2-1 Tuesday, now trailing in that series 3-2. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Day, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At least that's so long as I got anything to say about it. And I'll have something to say about it right up until 1800 on Friday.
They'll be saying since ever since he's been saying it.
That's for sure. So, as a part of the Second Amendment portion of the program, I'm always on the lookout for little squibs of news that talk about the Second Amendment, what it's good for, who's trying to take it away from us, and related subjects. And believe it or not, I have an article today from the Federalist talking about Democrats trying to take it away from us.
Whoa.
Yeah. Where are my pearls here that I could clutch at them? Yeah. So this is an article in the Federalist. Democrats weaponized IRS to extend NRA crackdown to Washington. House Democrats are demanding the Internal Revenue Service reconsider the tax-exempt status of the National Rifle Association just weeks after the New York State Attorney General launched a lawsuit seeking to disband the gun rights organization on corruption charges. The lawsuit filed by the New York Attorney General outlined a pattern of egregious, the lawsuit filed by the New York Attorney General outlined a pattern of egregious self-dealing by directors or members in control of the organizations, looting corporate assets solely for personal benefit, and using vendors and contractors to hide improper use of funds or conflicts of interest. The letter from House Democrat lawmakers read, "In light of this new information, we respectfully ask that you review whether the recent allegations against the NRA and NRA Foundation warrant reconsideration of the organization's federal tax-exempt status under Sections 501c3 and C4 of the Internal Revenue Code. The Democrat assault on the NRA is being led by, guess which state?
California?
Of course. California reps Jimmy Gomez and Brad Schneider on the Ways and Means and Oversight and Reform Committees. Just last month, New York Attorney General Letitia James began to fulfill a campaign promise to bring down the stalwart Second Amendment organization after declaring it a, quote, terrorist group.
Oh, boy.
Terrorist groups, that's something Democrats know a lot about. You know, like Black Lives Matter and Antifa, etc. She campaigned in 2018 for the mere crime of protecting gun rights. James is accusing the NRA leadership of operating corrupt schemes that undermine its nonprofit status and is taking aim at its longtime chief executive, Wayne LaPierre, as the primary culprit. Quote, the NRA's influence has been so powerful that the organization went unchecked for decades, while top executives funneled millions into their own pockets, James said in a statement as she announced the political lawsuit. The NRA is fraught with fraud and abuse, which is why today we seek to dissolve the NRA, because no organization is above law except Planned Parenthood Association. There you go. Yeah. Moments later, the NRA filed a lawsuit of its own, charging James of defamation in violation of the group's First Amendment rights to free speech. Quote, despite hopes that playing by the rules would procure a just outcome, the NRA has not been treated fairly by James's office, the suit read. The New York Democrat Party political machine seeks to harass, defund, and dismantle the NRA because of what it believes and what it says. So that's what I mean by, you know, I keep my eye out for matters dealing with the Second Amendment. Who would attempt to take it away from us? And I think I mentioned the name of the group that would really like to take your Second Amendment rights away from you. I won't tell you exactly what it is, but the name starts with D. Yeah, and it's not Republican, so maybe you can figure it out from there. Okay, Second Amendment. Let's go next to Zemi Ikotny. And yesterday, I almost got the Blue Star. Yeah.
That's a shame that the judges didn't go for you.
Yeah, I know it. The deck must have been stacked.
Against you.
Yeah, against me, because what I did was, instead of reading the useless daily news tripe from Gwinnett News Service, I substituted my own letter to the editor in the Post for the editorial. But the Blue Star went to the Post yesterday and not to me, but I was a close second.
Very close.
Yeah.
There was much deliberation, though.
Yeah, it was. I'm sure the judges had a hard time with that one. Today, this is the Daily News editorial. Believe it or not, it's not about a local subject, and it's not from the U.S., it's not from the PDN editorial board. It's from USA Today editorial board.
You don't say.
Yeah, what a shock. And the title is Enough Posturing. Congress needs to get virus relief, the virus relief done, deal done. I'm not going to spend any time with it. So once in a while, if the Daily News, as you were, if the Daily News editorial from Gannett makes some kind of sense, I might read it. but that happens very seldom. It's the old one, an infinite number of monkeys and an infinite number of typewriters and an infinite number of time would produce all the great works of the world. That's about what it's like looking at the Daily News editorial. You're right, Jose. Okay, and then the Post. Despite the $1.8 billion tourist industry's dormancy, a $950 million budget plan pretends it's business as usual. In the first quarter, just as the Wuhan virus pandemic was still emerging in China, the government of Guam submitted a budget proposal for fiscal year 2021. Let's give credit where credit is due. The governor submits the budget. Now, she doesn't sit down there at a word processor, type up the whole thing herself, but it's her budget. And she accomplishes her duties with the help of deputies and assistants. But it's not somebody else's budget. It's not Lester Carlson's budget. It's Lou Leon Guerrero's budget. The first quarter, the Lou Leon Guerrero submitted a budget proposal for fiscal 2021, which starts in October. The economic forecast that came with the budget proposal states the Wuhan virus pandemic was considered a low risk for Guam. This is a new virus, and although Guam is at low risk, this can change at any minute. This was when they submitted the budget in
2019.
The first quarter, January. The economic forecast that came with the budget, as you were at the time of this budget proposal, was submitted. No one on Guam had any clear grasp on the magnitude of this pandemic's ability to, and this governor's ability to drag down our island economy. This was the first budget plan's rosy tourism forecast then, just before Wuhan virus arrived on Guam shores. Quote, Guam's economy is progressing toward an increasingly expansionary trajectory, continuing its modest growth in fiscal 21. Tourism expenditures represent the largest share of the sources of funds flowing into the Guam economy. It further states the tourism portion of the island's economy has been quantified at $1.8 billion in 2016 alone, and a further increase was projected in the years since. Increases in tourism expenditures, therefore, should positively impact revenue and employment primarily in tourism support industries. The Guam Visitors Bureau has projected an increase in tourism arrivals of 2.9%. The report adds, we're going to get 2.9% more tourists this year than last year. Needless to say, all of that optimism is gone. You might say that it's off like a dirty shirt.
Yikes.
Hotels, restaurants, retail shops, tour shops, and other businesses that cater primarily to tourists have been closed for nearly half of the year now. The $1.8 billion portion of the economy remains at a standstill. So when the Guam legislature passed a budget plan for fiscal 2021, less than 2 hours before Monday night's deadline, you'd think it might reflect the sign of economic times. If a $1.8 billion portion of the island's more than $5 billion a year economy has been sidelined, the expectation is the administration and senators would wise up to be conservative in estimating how much will be available for the government of Guam to spend in the coming months to a year at the very least. The governor's pre-Wuhan virus budget initial proposal for the 2021 budget year that starts next month was $916 million. I'll repeat that number, $916 million. The legislature, by a vote of 15-2, passed a budget to spend at least $950 million. Yeah. So I guess things are better than what we thought.
There's hopeful, and then there's denial.
Yeah. There were speeches made by certain senators about the pandemic's impact on the economy, but the nearly $1 billion spending plan they approved shows they don't quite grasp the hardships facing those who help turn the wheels of our tourism industry. The wheels are not turning, and they won't for some time. The governor asked on Monday if she thought the local government would need to prepare for possible federal spending fatigue that could eventually slow down the flow of federal dollars to Guam. The governor said essentially, no, she's confident federal dollars will keep flowing. More than $1.5 billion in federal funds, she said, has been committed to Guam. Of that, close to $1 billion is for the unemployment program. More than $139 million in economic impact payment checks to household has been increased, has been released. As of June 1,999 Guam small businesses received $194 million in federal Paycheck Protection Program plan funds. Michael Bavacqua popped into the conversation and said, now you could see why we want independence for Guam. The government of Guam received more than $130 million in federal CARES Act funding to help with GovGuam expenses. The Guam Economic Development Authority has released more than $14 million in federal grants to help out small businesses. But as the tourism industry and non-essential businesses continue to be under shutdown, those federal funds are quickly drying up. Some small businesses have stated they have run out of steam. They can no longer afford rents, utilities, and other payables that continue to accrue even when there's no income being generated. While the government has benefited from income taxes withheld from unemployment checks, $324 million worth of unemployment benefit payouts so far have resulted in GovGuam's collection of $26 million in income tax. So we're able to collect taxes from the unemployment funds that are paid out. It's not going to be enough to plug a hole when businesses who have not been allowed to open will no longer be able to pay the same amount of taxes they were paying before Wuhan virus hit. In the budget, senators approved Monday night $304 million in business privilege tax was projected to be collected in fiscal 2021. This budget year, the projection was around $315 million. Despite the dormancy of a $1.8 million industry, GovGuam anticipates a decline in the business privilege tax revenue by a measly $11 million. Optimism is good, but false optimism is something else. The projected general fund revenue in fiscal 2020 was $645 million, and that was before Wuhan virus hit Guam. The projection for fiscal 21, funds that will be available in the governor's main purse, the general fund, is $630 million, only $15 million less. A third of the economy has been stagnant for half the year, and GovGuam expects an adverse impact of just $10 million? That's amazing. It is really amazing. So amazing though it is, it's good enough for another blue star for the Post. And that takes the Post up to 189. Here it is, a blue star for the Post. Daily News, that's what a real editorial looked like. They took all of those figures, it's complicated, but they laid them all out and they spun a good editorial, made their point, had a good punchline, and a call to action. And unfortunately, I'm afraid the governor's not listening. We are in for some really rough times. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but the time is going to come when we are not going to have any money. And the reason we're not going to have any money is because the governor, well, one of the reasons is because the governor keeps shutting down the economy. More about that later. Okay, let's go from there to the card. And on the card, I start out, of course, with Tina versus emergencies. Tina's up to 9 days now since she's seen the necessity to declare an emergency and suspend public hearing requirements. And then the next item on the card is California versus they, or maybe it's California versus them. And then I've got Jana Manglotnia versus Moore. Yeah. This is more. This started out as Magagaga versus Jana Manglotnia. Then it was Social Justice Warriors versus Akimoto. Then it was Jane Flores versus Akimoto. Now it's Jana Manglotnia versus Moore. It was also, it's Adelup versus the women. And then I've got Dr. Felix Cabrera versus Guam Memorial Hospital. I've got the Women's Chamber versus Bois. Versus Andrew. And then I've got Andrew and Lou. Andrew versus Lou. This was first on the card as Andrew versus CDC. I've got GOP versus Adelup, and Julian Ungen versus Capitalism, which has been on the card for a few days, and I just haven't gotten to it. Underwood versus Castro versus Michael San Nicolas, which is really interesting, and I haven't gotten to that either. Okay, so starting out with California versus them. Okay, let's take a short break here, and I'll come right back to California.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you wear a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are, California versus they, or maybe it's California versus them. And I got this from Breitbart.com. California lawmakers poised to pass bill to allow men to pick sex before incarceration. It's not what you think, Jose, because they'd all say yes.
All for choice, huh?
Yeah. Now, what the article is talking about, a person, it would go like this: a little dialogue. Well, you're heading for San Quentin, young man. Anything to say about that? Well, yeah. You called me young man. Actually, I want to be called young lady when I get to San Quentin.
They can't ask to see a cervix?
Apparently, they don't have cervix checks at the prison gate.
No service checks.
No cervix entrance. LGBT activists have been lobbying California lawmakers to pass legislation that will allow biological men to be put into women's prison population. Well, I can understand that. And now a bill to do just that is poised for approval. Activists argue that biological men who want to live as women or transgender women face danger if they are incarcerated with other men. The San Francisco Chronicle interviewed men living as women. Quote, as a transgender woman, Jasmine Jones said California prison system constantly put her life at risk during the 17 years she spent behind bars by housing her among men. Jones said she was assaulted repeatedly and raped 3 times in men's prisons. Guards mocked her identity, Jones said, and forced her to undergo humiliating strip searches that exposed her in public. Quote, they weren't going to protect me, Jones said, referring to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation officers. I knew that for a fact. The only person who was going to protect me was myself. Now, this is where the story gets really interesting. You don't have to honk your horn when I tell you who the sponsor of this bill was, Jose, although it's going to be tempting. Democrat State Senator Scott Wiener.
I couldn't help it.
Scott Wiener proposed SB 132, which would allow people to pick what sex they want to be before they are placed in prison. In most cases, the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation now houses transgender and other gender variant people in prisons according to their sex assigned at birth. I don't know if I was assigned a sex at birth, or I don't think I was assigned. I think I just was.
Just happened.
Yeah. Trans women in particular are at such extreme risk of brutalization in men's facilities, Wiener said. We need to treat them with basic respect and dignity that they deserve. Corrections spokesman Terry Thornton said that all prisoners are protected from violence. The Department of Corrections maintains a zero-tolerance policy for sexual harassment, sexual violence, staff sexual misconduct, and retaliation, Thornton said in an email. Data from the state shows that of the 102,000 people jailed in California, slightly more than 1,000 are, quote, transgender, non-binary, or intersex people. So I guess we got to take our hats off here to Senator Scott Wiener.
What is it with that name and stories that have to do with genitalia? Do you remember the Attorney General from New York? What's his name? New York or Connecticut?
An Attorney General with the same name?
Anthony. Was that Anthony Weiner?
Yeah, but he was a member. He was a member of the House of Representatives.
Oh, that too. Yeah.
And he was the husband of Hillary Clinton's
top aide.
Top aide. What was her name? Uma Abedin.
Yeah. Didn't take his last name.
No, she didn't. Yeah. She didn't call herself. Well, maybe she did. We don't know. She might have called herself Mrs. Wiener.
She wasn't a winner.
Yeah. Okay, next item on the card is Adeloop versus the Women's Chamber. Yeah.
They're battling now.
The Adeloop versus the Women's Chamber and BWA, which stands for what, Jose?
The Bureau of Women's Affairs.
And who was it that first started referring to the Bureau of Women's Affairs as BWA?
BWA.
BWA, he said.
I was just reading the acronym.
There you go. The governor's press conference on Monday regarding GovGuam's fiscal 2019 finances drew seething criticism from the Republican Party of Guam. Seething criticism. I wished I'd have been there. I kind of like criticism myself, especially if I'm the one who's doing criticizing. It's not so much fun when you're the one that's being criticized. But I don't think as much criticizing as I've done, I don't think I've ever engaged in seething criticism.
How would you characterize your criticism as seething?
No, mine is not seething. It's a little bit.
If you were to.
If I were to characterize it?
If you were to seethe.
Yeah, I'd have to seethe first, right? Yeah. Seething criticism. Governor Lou Leon Guerrero needs a reality check, a GOP release stated, summing up statements about intentions to fill additional director and deputy director positions, higher starting salaries for Adeloop staff, and the governor's backpedaling of campaign promises to reduce taxes, among other statements. The GOP said Leon Guerrero failed to report that the fiscal 2019 surplus was due to Democrats in the 31st Guam legislature. It allowed the business privilege tax to remain at 5% forever, and claimed that upon taking office, she realized the need to reward family and friends and supporters with jobs and contracts, creating a need to keep the BPT increase. So that's what the Republicans said in seething criticism. Well, since the criticism was seething, you could expect the governor's office to come back. Well, the news article here characterizes the responses coming from Adeloop. I don't know how the newspapers do these things, you know. In my lifetime, except for parrots, and what was the name of that talking horse in the movies?
Mr. Ed.
Mr. Ed, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Except for Mr. Ed and parrots, I only know that people can talk. But in news stories, you find buildings talking, you know, Public Works said that.
Sometimes the hills are alive with music.
There you go. Well, in this case, it was Adeloop that responded. So it was a whole lugat, right?
That must have been startling.
It was. And here's how Adeloop responded. This is Adeloop versus the Women's Chamber in BWA. Adeloop retorted, stating the GOP release followed the recent passage of the fiscal 2021 budget, which is funded in part by the 5% BPT, in which nearly all Republicans lawmakers support it. Now, here we go. As a woman, Lou Leon Guerrero, as your Governor Leon Guerrero, knows you don't always get credit for cleaning up for others. You just hope they'd lend a helping hand. I'm going to read it again. As a woman, Governor Leon Guerrero knows you don't always get credit for cleaning up after others. You just hope they'd lend a helping hand. That's pretty bad. Adelup ought to wash its mouth. Such stereotyping, such a war on women. Now, this story doesn't have the response from the women's chamber, but I suspect that when the folks at the women's chamber see this article in the Post, they'll be incensed. And I would also expect a request for an apology to come from the Bureau of Women's Affairs, or BOA, telling Adelup, you need to apologize to Governor to all women, and to Governor Leon Guerrero, right?
Absolutely.
How sexist can Adelup be? Yeah, as a woman, Governor Leon Guerrero knows you don't always get credit for cleaning up after others. Yeah, stereotyping. Okay, next item on the card is, where did my card go? It's Felix Cabrera versus GMH, and this comes from KOM News. A member of the governor's Physicians Advisory Group doesn't need the findings of an investigation into the death of a nurse at GMH. Dr. Felix Cabrera says it's apparent she caught Wuhan virus at the hospital. The incident, along with a growing number of hospitalizations, has many questioning what's being done to stop the spread of infection. It's definitely a nosocomial infection if you acquired it in the hospital, Dr. Felix Cabrera told KOM News. But as the actual source, we'll never know for sure. GMH ICU and ER nurse Marnette Agabao was admitted to GMH in July and had repeatedly tested negative for Wuhan, but then tested positive within the week that she had passed, said the physician. With the belief that Nurse Agabao caught Wuhan virus at the hospital and the increasing number of GMH frontliners testing positive, Cabrera said, "I don't have the exact number with me." What's the plan, and are the discussions underway to move all non-Wuhan virus patients out of GMH to what's supposed to be the Wuhan-free hospital at GRMC to prevent further nosocomial infections? According to Dr. Cabrera, a member of the Physicians Advisory Group, that's up to GMH. Physically, there's room there. I'm sure they have their reasons, but we've yet to fully understand how that outweighs the clear and present danger. That would make a good title for a movie, The Clear and Present Danger, that exists for these special patients and the risk of them acquiring a nosocomial infection, in other words, a hospital-acquired infection. The increasing number of hospitalizations at GMH and the skilled nursing unit facility in Barragata Heights, still not open, has many, including Dr. Cabrera, acknowledging there should have been better follow-through in preparing for this second wave.
You don't say.
Yeah, boy, I got an idea what the foot of Dr. Cabrera's bed is going to look like tomorrow.
We don't have that many horses here on Guam.
I know. People got to be more careful of what they say. We're going to wipe out all the horses. We've had months to prepare for this wave. We've had for months. We've had a lull, and we have not done enough to prepare for this. And I think that's very clear. And I don't know if it's because it was more of a reprieve from the first wave that we had and trying to get caught up with a lot of things. The key thing is we had to sharpen the saw, and we had to really look at what we needed to do to improve, and that's part that was ensuring that the SMU, the skilled nursing unit, was brought up online and was ready to go for the next spike, because we made it very clear that we had no idea when it would come, but when it did, it was going to hit us real hard. That's the second wave. And very quickly, and sure enough, it did. Also ready to accept fault. So Cabrera is ready to accept fault, but of course he can't accept. Where is the lieutenant governor here to assign? You know, the lieutenant governor never came along and said who should apologize for the Akamoto-ism that was expressed on KOM. And I thought our lieutenant governor was kind of the arbiter of apologies, because he's the one that got Janela off the hook, if you remember that. The lieutenant governor said Janela doesn't have to apologize. Carlo Branch apologized. That was good enough. So now we've got Dr. Cabrera coming out here saying unkind things about the administration. Now, this is the real shocking part of this story. So Cabrera is, in essence, accepting fault. He's saying these are things we should have done. And he's using Hita, not Hame. We inclusive. We meaning me, along with everybody else. Also ready to accept fault, Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio, quote, "Yes, anything that is happening right now, obviously, I take responsibility, both the good and bad. I'll just say that I'm monitoring the situation with hospital capacity, and all the different things triggers were used to try and expand it. I tell you that the SNU is probably, we find out when I get on, but I'm pretty much certain that we'll be able to move about 11 patients over there in the next day or two." So there we have it. You know, there's a little bit more here, but Felix Cabrera accepts responsibility for us. That would be the Physicians Advisory Group. And I would think the us would take in the Director of Public Health and Social Services. I would think the we would take in the Director of Guam Memorial Hospital. I would think the we would take the governor in, and horror of horrors, Jana Manglotnya.
Oh.
Yeah, so, you know, if Dr. Felix Cabrera is laying it on Dr. Jana Manglotnya, he can expect a request for an apology from the Bois and also from the Women's Chamber, because you, under no circumstances, may you criticize a female, even in an indirect manner, by saying we.
Well, this just in, Bob.
Sir.
Adelup just responded and said, as a woman, Governor Lilian Guerrero knows you don't always get credit for cleaning up after others. Dr. Cabrera, Lieutenant Governor Tenorio, and Carla Branch take credit for cleaning up. Because they're all without a cervix.
Yeah, they're men, so they have to get involved here.
One more point, too.
Yeah.
We're still in a health emergency, right?
Yes.
And who is responsible for a health emergency?
Well, the Director of Public Health and Social Services as sort of the epidemiological responsibility for it.
Right.
Is that what you meant?
But ultimately, who put us in the health emergency? There's one person that
the governor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's who we is.
Yeah. Yeah. So if and it comes back here, you know, and it comes back to this: the governor is in charge. She ran for governor. She wasn't drafted. The 13th Amendment would prohibit her from being enslaved in the position, so she wanted it. But if you are the governor, everything that happens that shouldn't in the government is guess whose fault? And everything that doesn't happen that should, still the governor's fault.
Yeah, very clear. The virus is not her fault.
No.
But the poor planning needs some taking a look at.
And we went through that the other day with the Post editorial, where we had an emergency plan that was put together in 2008 on March 4th, a day that I remember because...
You March 4th.
Exactly. It's the only day of the year that gives a command. The muckety-mucks got together to revise that plan and figure out what they would do if they were struck with a real pandemic. And they figured it all out. They just didn't do it. So that all comes back to the governor. Now, Josh Tenorio is the lieutenant governor, and he has an extremely serious responsibility under the Organic Act. The lieutenant governor is, according to the Organic Act, the keeper of the Guam seal. That's it. That's his only responsibility.
I almost made a seal noise.
So he is. So why is the lieutenant governor stepping forward here to take the blame? Yeah. Well, I'll give you my 2 cents worth on that as soon as we come back from this short break.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and Mezcla Dos are open for takeout and delivery services. More details, call the Hagåtña location at 479-2652 or Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon at 646-6295. Get your Mezcla fix at the comfort of your home.
Yeah, so here we are, back again here, about 8 more minutes till that big halftime show that we all like so well. So we had Dr. Felix Cabrera, who has been a mainstay in the government's dealing with the Wuhan virus. He's a member of the Physicians Advisory Council, and he's signing up, taking the blame. He said, we didn't do what we should have done. You know, we knew what was coming. We had time. We just didn't get it done. And by we, I think it's reasonable to include the entire health establishment with only one exception, Dr. Jana Manglotnya. So I because Dr. Jana Manglotnya is above criticism, it couldn't have been her. But everybody else in the public health establishment screwed up, according to Dr. Cabrera. And then the lieutenant governor comes along and says, yeah, I'll take the hit too. I didn't do what I should have done. So the lieutenant governor has no official role as far as driving this train. And the governor has not, like President Trump said, I'm putting Mike Pence in charge of the response to the Wuhan virus. She didn't do that. So as far as we know, he's sitting in his office, probably with some sort of polishing compound and a rag, polishing up the Guam seal, which is his major function. Why would the lieutenant governor take blame? Oh. How about this? You know, we read stories of heroism of soldiers in combat, and they're in a foxhole, and the enemy throws a hand grenade in the foxhole. And that hand grenade, when it detonates, is going to kill 3 or 4 other soldiers. So this one brave soldier dives on the hand grenade, and it blows him up. He loses his life in the process, but he saved 2 or 3 of his fellow soldiers, and we think that guy was a hero, right?
Absolutely.
Could that have been it? Could that have been it? Could the lieutenant governor said, I know it's not my fault. You know, the governor won't even let me mention the word hospital in the rare occasions when I ever get to say anything on TV. But this time she said, she borrowed a line from my favorite movie, On the Waterfront. She came into his office and said, "This ain't your night, kid. We're going for the price on Wilson." And John says, "What do you mean going for the price on Wilson? I could take Wilson apart." And she says, "No, you got to do it." And Josh says, "You don't understand, Governor. I could have been somebody. I could have gone somewhere. I could have been a contender." But he had to do it. He had to do it anyhow. He had to.
Could have been a contender.
He had to cover for the boss. Is that what happened? He had to take one for the team. Well, until somebody comes along and gives me a better reason or a better idea than that, that's what I think happened. So I'm wondering what's going to happen when the governor, as Ronald Reagan said about his director of Interior, when Governor Leon Guerrero takes Felix Cabrera to the woodshed. Yeah, very, very interesting how, and the point is really not a laughing matter. When a person is admitted to the hospital and contracts the Wuhan virus in the hospital, then we have to ask ourselves, are we just wasting our time with all this social distancing? If you're not even safe in the hospital, what is all this wearing masks and 6-foot distance? What difference does it make? Even the hospital isn't safe. And you would think that the hospital would have protocols in place that would make it the safest of any place. Not so. And that brings us to the next item on the card, which is Andrew versus Lou. This was on the card yesterday as Andrew versus CDC. And this comes from a story in the Post. Autopsies not requested to verify Wuhan. No autopsies have been performed to know for certain whether Wuhan virus was the cause of the Guam deaths that have been described by local officials as Wuhan-related, officials said. In particular, 2 deaths that were previously described as being related to Wuhan virus involved patients who were dead on arrival at GMH. Both had underlying medical conditions, officials have said. Simply put, they were swabbed and their results came back Wuhan virus positive. That's a fact. The swab specimens was obtained was Wuhan virus positive, so we can't say it's not, because it is. GMH Administrator Lillian Paris-Posadas told the Post. She said whether it was the cause of death is not for the hospital to determine. That's for the governor's spokesperson to determine. Yeah. The governor's spokesperson, Crystal Paco San Augustine, said anything that looks like Wuhan, we treat it as a Wuhan virus death to keep the numbers up there. Yeah. Posada said whether it's cause of death or not is not for the hospital to determine. It would have to be an autopsy, Posada said. On Tuesday, the governor announced Guam's Wuhan virus-related death toll has risen to 13. I'm going to put my mask on and and go watch that big halftime parade, and I'll be back in about 7 minutes.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Pledging help to rebuild. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump's visit to Kenosha, Wisconsin Tuesday brought out more protesters for and against his visit.
Though separated by just a short distance, the scenes were sharply disconnected and seemingly worlds apart.
Our nephew was shot 7 times in the back. Nothing can justify that.
I came to thank the law enforcement, the police, they're incredible, and the National Guard has been truly amazing.
A law and order pitch in a town beset by violence after the shooting of a black man by a white police officer, where a 17-year-old gunman fired on his would-be attackers. A town now hoping to heal.
Fox's Kevin Cork, the president pledging federal financial assistance to help the city rebuild. The Justice Department confirming it has launched a probe of who's funding what they are calling outside agitators in many of the protests this summer. There's been another fatal officer-involved shooting, this time in Sacramento, California.
According to Sacramento police, detectives were following up on a known suspect who was wanted for attempted homicide. They say they had information that he was at this home. Crisis negotiators were able to get everyone out of the house except the suspect they were looking for. He eventually ran out of the house, hopping a fence, armed with a firearm. At least one officer shot the man. Sacramento police say officers attempted life-saving measures, and so did responding fire department personnel, but the man was pronounced deceased on scene.
That's reporter Dennis Shanahan of Fox 40 in Sacramento. The day after crowds broke windows at the building in which he lives, Portland, Oregon's Mayor Ted Wheeler now condemning the violence in his city, calling it stupid, dangerous, and criminal. Oregon State troopers returning to Portland, but now federally deputized. NASDAQ and the S&P 500 with record closes Tuesday. Asian markets closing Wednesday mixed. American is listening to Fox News.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific grows but branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
A new medical study shows that antibodies produced by the body against the coronavirus keep fighting for months.
The study was conducted on more than 30,000 people in Iceland. It finds the antibodies people produce last for at least 4 months. The finding means that vaccine developers may be able to focus on remedies that stimulate antibody production, which could lead to immunity from the virus. What researchers with an Icelandic-based branch of American biotech company Amgen do not know right now is whether having COVID protects you from the virus in the future. The study and a summary of it is published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Another tropical storm expected to spin up to hurricane strength Nana, forecast to make landfall Tuesday in Belize. People in Honduras, Guatemala, and Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula are being warned to make preparations. Nana is the 14th named storm this year. It's the earliest in the season that's ever happened. Tropical storm Omar has formed off the coast of North Carolina, but its forecast track is due east, making it unlikely to be a threat before weakening on Thursday. NHL playoffs on Tuesday.
Overtime heroics keep the Philadelphia Flyers playoff hopes alive.
Claude Giroux all the way back. Here's Provorov. A wrist shot. They score! The Flyers win in overtime with traffic out in front. Scott Lawton was on the spot.
Call courtesy of NBC Sports Network. Scott Lawton with a deflection that gets in the back of the net for the game winner. Flyers survive a scare from the New York Islanders 4-3 in OT. Philadelphia now trailing in that Eastern Conference semifinal series 3-2. The Vancouver Canucks still in the hunt as well. The lone Canadian club left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, defeating the Vegas Golden Knights 2-1 Tuesday, now trailing in that series 3-2. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
They're back. Any foot long is a $5 foot long when you buy one at regular price at participating locations. Subway, eat fresh.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumont. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. We do it every afternoon at 1700. It gets better and better. I had a chance to peek at the Facebook comments during the break, and Lynn McAfee came up with a really good one. She referred to all of you folks out there in our international radio listening audience as tailgaters. T-A-L.
I like that.
Yeah, that is great. Tailgaters, in the mainland, before every football game, college football game, even pro football games, people will get to the stadium a couple hours early, and they'll have little parties on the tailgates of their pickup trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of snacks and beer and stuff like that. So tailgating, I've done it a couple of times. I did it a couple of times at University of Wisconsin football games when I was back in the States in the fall. And to tell you the truth, I enjoyed the tailgating more than I did the football game.
Sometimes you make it to the game.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So Lynn McAfee, that's a stroke of genius. So from now on, we have the Tall Tales Posse, the international radio listening audience, the Tall Tales Truth Posse. We can also refer to ourselves as tailgaters. And then it ties in nicely with how you attach the word gate to other things if you want to give them sort of permanence, like Watergate.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. So congratulations, Lynn. That was a stroke of genius. Now, going to the phones, I have Drive-Through Jack on the line here. So, Jack, is it Wendy's or McDonald's today?
Oh no, Bob. I'm heading home today. And in fact, I'm literally out here with a bunch of tailgaters. So
boy,
we got a full line out here, but I'm literally out here with tailgaters. So, anyways, I called because I heard you speaking about the Lieutenant Governor and Dr. Cabrera. I don't think they're falling on their swords. I might probably go as far as calling them maybe patsies. But
patsies.
If you're taking responsibility or something, isn't there supposed to be repercussions? So are we to surmise that the Lieutenant Governor is resigning for his lack of ability to hold his position as a seal holder? Is Dr. Cabrera surrendering his license to practice here in Guam because of his failure to address the Wuhan virus here in Guam? I hazard to think that nothing, for them saying that they're taking responsibility of something, there must be some sort of responsibility taken. There must be some sort of repercussions, but I don't see any of that happening. Do you?
Well, the last time someone spoke out as clearly as Dr. Cabrera did, that was Dr. Hua Gwen. Our caller from New Jersey said that he had, you'll remember that Gwen next day walked it back. And our caller from New Jersey said that he wondered if Gwen woke up that morning and found a horse's head at the foot of his bed.
The old Godfather reference.
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, so as much as our preach, this happens a lot here in Guam politics, I do believe. People taking responsibility for something they have no, what is it? How are they taking responsibility for something that, wasn't it that reporter, that crack reporter, what's his name, Chris Barnett, that was screaming on social media not too long ago that the Lieutenant Governor had no responsibility for this pandemic, and he needed some response. He says, why aren't we utilizing the Lieutenant Governor more?
Well,
wasn't it Chris Barnett that was screaming that in social media not just too long ago?
Jack, I know almost everything about almost everything, but I have very little knowledge of what Chris Barnett said.
Yeah, no, it wasn't social media. He put it on his own social media that he was upset that the Lieutenant Governor wasn't more involved with what's going on with the Wuhan virus.
Well, if you go back a little ways, Jack, you'll remember a certain former senator gave a speech to the Chamber of Commerce about what he would do if he were the governor. And one of the things he would do would be to ask Congress to amend the Organic Act to get rid of the Lieutenant Governor because it's a useless position. It has no function. In 1950, it might have made sense. In 2020, it makes no sense at all. So perhaps Josh Tenorio heard that and said, well, maybe I better do something here. I think I'll be a blame absorber. That way they won't take me out of the game.
But yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, it's empty. I don't know empty apologies, empty restitution. What I really want the media and reporters to concentrate on is that there's a lot of money being spent, federal money being spent on the Wuhan virus and for COVID-19, whatever you want to call it. But I want to know how much money has been spent to those who have lost their lives. Did the government pick up the tab for the burial of these people? Is the government picking up the tab for those who are diagnosed with having this virus? What exactly? How much money are going to those who have suffered in these things.
Well, if they work for the government, they get an extra 25% because obviously they were exposed to the virus.
Yeah, but just we have a small amount, and although it's great loss, we have like 10 or 11, now 14, I think, people that have died of COVID. How much of that COVID money has been spent on them? I mean, are their funerals being covered? Are their hospital bills being covered? I mean, these are important questions because there's millions, billions of dollars being spent here in Guam. And how much is it really going to those people who have passed and suffered? I don't understand why no reporter has said, well, you know, the government has picked up the tab for this person who passed away. The government has picked up the tab for the medical bills. I mean, that's what the money was for, right? At least a small percentage or something should go to those people who have died because of this virus.
An interesting point, Jack.
And it's, you know, I mean, let's break it down. I mean, we're suffering now because the governor believes, and those around here believe, that this is a deadly disease. Okay, people have died. How much has Guam given to those people? Have they paid for the funerals? Are they paying for the caskets? Are they paying for loved ones to be flown over here to mourn and grieve? Are they paying for the hospital bills? Well, we know that for every COVID patient that comes in that are positive, they get some sort of money either by insurance or by federal grants just because they tested positive. But how about for those who did test positive? Did they get a bump on something?
You'd think they'd at least get a badge they could wear on their jacket, right?
Exactly, or even an expired coupon from McDonald's, you know, something, you know, that they could paste on the wall.
A free pass to the McDonald's drive-through.
Well, anyways, you know, I called earlier this morning to Ray's show, but I called in kind of late. But I heard him mentioning something about one of the sponsors having a barbecue baby back rib thing, and I didn't catch where it was. So I was hoping maybe Jose could just, you know, off you know, when I'm off the air, just mention what restaurant he was referring to, because you know, I would.
Jack, I wouldn't want you to have to go without that information. I know choosing the right drive-through is very important for you. So could you tell Jack, Jose?
I'm not exactly sure who it is that's doing this.
What was that?
But the only thing that comes to mind when I hear baby back ribs.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Where at?
I think it was that place is called Chili's, right? With that song.
Chili's?
Chili's? Okay. I'm going to take advantage of that. Is that today?
I think we're back to that new law in California, and the senator from California. I mean from California. If you know what I'm talking about, Jose.
Yes, Bob, you are a winner.
Yeah, wiener, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Bob. And I also wanted to mention, I'm hoping you're keeping track on what's happening to Kyle.
Oh yeah, I am indeed. Yeah.
Keep track of that because you know they've taken away his GoFundMe ability to raise money because they consider him a terrorist or something like that. They've removed everything from Facebook concerning him, and you know for those who support him and what he's done. You were born in Wisconsin. You know that Wisconsin's gun laws are as close to the original understanding of what the Second Amendment is. And I think Wisconsin is probably the only state that mirrors what it really represents in the Second Amendment. And so, and you're from that area, you know, he didn't just come across state. I mean, he worked.
He worked in Kenosha, yeah.
Yeah, and then the media is making him sound like he came across, you know, the Trail of Tears or something, and you know it's not true. So I hope you're keeping track on it, and I hope that you know that he's being silenced big time by all like the GoFundMe, Facebook, Twitter. A lot of this.
I'll cover it, Jack.
Okay, and also that I think you already know that the law firm that represents Nick Sandman is representing him, and I think this guy's probably going to win a lot of money.
Well, you know, if I were one to bet on such things, I'm betting that he is not going to be found guilty of a serious crime. He'll have a gun violation, and that'll be it. And I'm going to go way out on the limb, and I'm going to tell you that when the George Floyd matter finally comes to trial, it ought to result in no more than a negligent homicide verdict against the police. But of course, we don't follow those rules anymore. You know, the Black Lives Matter folks who would tell you that, would tell you about lynching all day long, would say it's okay to publicly lynch somebody now, depending on the identity politics involved, right, Jack?
Exactly, Bob. So anyways, I just caught, I wish you a good rest of the afternoon, evening, and, keep up the good work.
Thank you, Jack. Good talking to you. Well, let's drive through Jack.
Well, the drive-through he can go through, and we had several calls clarifying the ribs situation for Jack. The one consistent sponsor we do have is Chili's, and they are celebrating National Baby Back Ribs Day tomorrow, September 3rd.
Wait a minute. Tomorrow is National Baby Back Ribs Day?
Tomorrow.
Gosh, I forgot. I haven't started my preparations.
I haven't put up my
I haven't put up
yet.
my tree yet, no. I haven't hung the wreaths around the house, yeah.
And another caller talked about a Circle K, I think, believes has them also. But I know that it's officially celebrated tomorrow. National Baby Back Ribs Day.
Oh, what an important day. Is that going to be a holiday for us?
No, sir. We're going to be here.
Yeah. We celebrate most of the really important holidays we celebrate. I guess that's the exception, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the card here after a brief interlude with Drive-Through Jack. Talking about the fact that when people arrive at GMH dead on arrival, they're counted as Wuhan virus casualties. And Lillian Paris-Posadas, the director of GMH, is explaining. She says, Guam currently doesn't have a chief medical examiner, and the community relies on a Saipan-based doctor who flies to Guam periodically to perform autopsies. So it's him who makes the determination whether or not an autopsy should be done. And he would be the one who puts it on the death certificate that it is a Wuhan virus death. We don't want to deceive people that it was not a Wuhan virus death.
Yeah, that's kind of confusing.
So apparently, when somebody arrives dead on arrival and tests positive, they think it would be deceptive to say this person arrived dead on arrival. We don't know if that person died from the virus, but he tested positive. It's less deceptive just to say this person died of Wuhan virus.
I would say just don't put it in ink yet.
Yeah. The medical examiner's office responded to the request saying no information available. Paris-Posada said GMH's policy since March is to perform a swab even on those pronounced dead on arrival. Quote, early on, there were some DOAs that were negative, she said, adding that the policy early in the pandemic was to cremate or bury within 24 hours. The policy was initially put in place to minimize exposure of others to the Wuhan virus. The cremation policy has changed, according to the Department of Public Health and Social Services spokeswoman, Janella Carrera. So Public Health has called out the big guns on this one. Janella said they are now, for the most part, treated like conventional burials with some exceptions to ensure the safety of family and employees at the hospital and at funeral homes. Whether the individual died from Wuhan virus or an underlying comorbidity remains unclear, however. Grace Berdaju, the Wuhan virus incident public information officer, so the virus has its own public information officer. Talk about empire building. If the exact cause of death, she said, an autopsy could be ordered if the exact cause of death is not clear. When asked if, as a part of the process, autopsies are performed as those categorized as Wuhan virus-related fatalities, Berdaju responded, autopsies have not been ordered. Carrera added, I'm not aware of any autopsies being performed as we do not have a medical examiner. Autopsies are usually performed at the request of the family or foul play is suspected, or to rule out other causes of death if ordered by the physician. So this is titled Andrew versus Lou. So there's a certain clarity here, and that is that if a person tests positive, we're going to count it as a Wuhan virus death. And then, 4 paragraphs into the story, we might mention we didn't do an autopsy or something like that. But Andrew hypothesized the extent to which Lou and her gang are willing to characterize a death as a Wuhan virus death. You'll recall that Andrew gave us the hypothetical situation of a despondent person going to Two Lovers Point and being so down in the dumps, they jump over and commit suicide. And when it's only one person, but we have to call it them, when they hit the water, a shark comes along and devours almost the entire body of the suicide person. But they send divers in the next day, and the divers are able to recover the nose of the person who committed suicide. They turn it over to public health. They do the swab on the nose, and it comes back positive for Wuhan virus. Therefore, the person died of Wuhan virus and is added to the count. That's the Andrew test. Congratulations, Andrew. You are now recognized as a post-mortem executive or expert here on Tall Tales. But this takes us to something else here that I got off a really good website called LouRockwell.com. And the title is Wake Up, America. You've been conned. Only an estimated 9,683 Wuhan virus deaths so far in 2020, not 180,000. So you want to take a break, Jose?
Yeah, let's do that real quick.
All right, let's break for the 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Hagåtña and Mezcla Dos Upper Tumon are now open for takeout and delivery services. For more information, call now at 479-2652 or 3 or Mezcla Dos at 646-6295. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with the true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine at the comfort of your own home. They take your local favorite dishes and serve them with extra flair you will only find at Mezcla. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties. Doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
So here we are, Wrigley Field, Chicago, and no baseball game today. The last time we had a baseball game, it was the Cubs versus the White Sox, and my prediction was right on the money. I predicted that Chicago was going to win, and I was right. Okay, so back to Breitbart.com and an article entitled, "Wake Up, America, You've Been Conned." And it talks about a report from the Center for Public Health Statistics of August 26 and states the following: 6% of the deaths for 6% of the deaths, Wuhan virus was the only cause mentioned. So of all these 180,000 fatalities, only 6% for sure died of the Wuhan virus, not one of the comorbidities. So the article goes on to say, oh, you mean America is not undergoing a pandemic? On average, about 8,000 people die per day from all causes in the United States. 8,000 people every day. That means that there will be, every Saturday in the mainland, there will be 8,000, no, every day. So that would be 56,000 matais every Saturday, right?
Yes.
Yeah. In the first 8 months of 2020, there were 1,200 excess deaths per month, or 40 extra deaths per day, exclusively due to Wuhan virus infections, with 80% of those among Americans age 65 and older. By extrapolation, there were only 8 excess Wuhan virus only deaths per day among working age adults and school children. In other words, in the whole country, only 8 people died of the Wuhan virus. Only 8 adults and school-age children died of the Wuhan virus on the average day. Translation: of the 161,392 accumulated Wuhan virus-related deaths report as of August 22, 80% of which are Americans aged 75 and older, 80% of them are 75 or older. Only 6%, or 9,683 accumulated deaths, were classified as Wuhan virus only. Among these Wuhan virus only deaths, 60% were aged 75 and older, 80% were aged 65 and older. So there were only 2,000 Wuhan virus only deaths in working age adults and school age children. Only 2,000. Lockdowns, quarantines, social distancing, and face masks were an overkill, permanently destroying lives as businesses went bankrupt and the future of young Americans were quashed. Americans over 75 who have comorbid conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, pneumonia, obesity, and heart disease who died with Wuhan virus lung infection in addition to their comorbid conditions would probably have been in their deathbeds regardless of the Wuhan virus outbreak. About 240 days have passed from January 1 to August 31. If we calculate for average total deaths per day, that's about 8,000, that comes to 1,920,000 deaths in the United States the first 8 months of 2020. An estimated additional 9,683 accumulated deaths were attributed to Wuhan virus-only infections, for a total of 1,930,000 total deaths, with 9,683 Wuhan virus-only deaths being only 0.5% of all deaths. For 0.5% increase in deaths, this country was locked down, the population made forever fearful, and draconian measures threw millions out of work and ruined small and even large businesses. It's a lot of numbers, but it's pretty shocking when you strip the paint and varnish off of it and start thinking about, with this idea of comorbid conditions, for people 75 and older with these comorbid conditions, it would be interesting to see an actuarial workup of how long those people would have lasted had they not contracted the virus. And I have a feeling it wouldn't have been very long. For comparison, an estimated 33,800 Americans died in the Hong Kong flu in 1968, which was the mildest flu epidemic in the 20th century. Yet life in the U.S. went on as normal during the Hong Kong flu. So how do we erase these fears of a virus that really wasn't as big a killer as advertised? How do we begin shaking hands with people again? How do we overcome our fear that others may be harboring the virus and infecting our lungs? How do we stop washing down shopping carts in grocery stores, since Wuhan virus lung infections require airborne transmissions? Viral transfer of any respiratory virus from contact on any surface is not the common way are infected, the CDC concedes. How do we stop airports from temperature checks and quarantines from incoming flyers? Americans almost need to go into therapy to overcome a news media-driven phobia. How do we take these fearmongers in government and medicine and make them accountable for what appears to be a contrived pandemic to cover for a collapsing economy used as an excuse to get rid of paper money and usher in a worldwide digital currency that will be controlled by unelected parties who will essentially rule the world and needlessly force vaccines on the entire human population? And then, of course, you're probably, as I'm reading that, you're probably saying, who? And the answer this time is not first base.
It's yes.
Yeah. There have been many more deaths from despair. There have been an estimated 75,000 suicides from dealing with the pandemic in the United States. More than from the Wuhan virus itself. What do we do with all those billions of needless vaccines that have already been purchased by government health agencies? The health sector of the stock market would crash with the notification of the epidemic has been called off. The means Americans will attempt to America will attempt to vaccinate 328 million citizens to spare 10,000 lives. That means 327,990,000 will be needlessly vaccinated. And a licensed vaccine may be only 50% effective, making it an even more remote chance immunization will actually prevent future coronavirus infections. There is a stronger likelihood far more Americans will experience serious vaccination-related side effects than develop any long-term immunity, as it has been found the antibodies against Wuhan virus don't last very long. Americans found out how to stay healthy without the doctoring and running to the hospital. Americans found that vitamin and mineral supplements actually work, despite modern medicine looking disparagingly at them. It was discovered zinc-dependent T cells, not antibodies, kill off Wuhan virus. The lack of sunshine, vitamin D in winter months explains the seasonal wintertime onset of all infectious diseases. Selenium prevents virus from mutating. Vitamin C activates sluggish white blood cells and is curative when administered intravenously. Zinc lozenges are now routinely used in intensive care units for lung infections. Why would any American want to go back to conventional medicine? So maybe this article overstates its case just a little bit. This is from, once again, from Lou Rockwell. But certainly the alarmist aspects of the whole thing were not overstated. There's no getting around that.
That's what I got away from that.
Yeah.
From that, yeah.
Yeah. That when you start really looking at the numbers, and then when you couple that with this desire to treat every single death as a Wuhan death, people arrive at the hospital DOA. Oh, he's DOA? Okay, well let's see if he's Wuhan virus positive, so we could add to our numbers. Okay. Needless to say, I've got the most dangerous man in the room in the green room right now. So, good afternoon, most dangerous man in the green room.
Hey, Bob. Can you hear me?
I can hear you 5 by 5, Carl.
Yeah, I watched a couple of short, very informative videos recently that also talked about the connection between vitamin D levels in the bloodstream and positive outcomes or negative outcomes with vitamin D. I watched a video by Scott Adams in which he talked about all these groups that are known for being susceptible, vulnerable to this virus, and at the same time, they also have low vitamin D. People who are elderly, low vitamin D. People who are overweight tend to have not enough vitamin D. People with high melanin levels, such as blacks, because a lot of melanin slows down the amount of vitamin D that the body can manufacture. People with diabetes, low vitamin D. People living in smoggy cities because of less sunshine, low vitamin D. Nursing home patients, because they're always indoors most of the time, low vitamin D. Prisons, low vitamin D. Let me see what else is there. And some of the places that were also had a high rate of this virus, such as in the Chinese urban centers. And also he brought up about New York. If you go to New York, the city, he said when he was there, you almost get no sunshine walking through the city all day because of the big buildings. So you get all these people walking around and not getting enough sunshine. And about 28%, I think it was, that another video I saw of Americans have low vitamin D levels. So, and vitamin D affects the body's immune system. So I just thought it was an interesting correlation between levels of vitamin D and this disease, this virus. I just thought it was quite interesting. Vitamin D is one of only 2 vitamins that I take because I think it's so important. I also try to get some sunshine every day that the sun is out. Go out and sit and read for a while.
You know, listening to what you say about vitamin D, and I agree 100%, vitamin D is almost a miracle drug, a miracle pill. But, you know, we've got to direct some of the blame to the director of Parks and Recreation, because people can't go swimming anymore because they can't figure out how to keep the pool from turning green. We have our own version of the Green New Deal here on Guam. So I guess, you know, we're doing about as good with the Wuhan virus as we did with the swimming pools. But go on with your tale, Carl.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because we are in a situation where we have a natural advantage over a lot of areas that don't get enough sunshine. Sometimes some parts of the year, sometimes through the whole year they don't get enough sunshine. And we get sunshine, you know, by the dump truck load. I mean, we've got sunshine all over the place. So telling us we can't go to the beach, we can't go to the parks is some of the worst advice we could have gotten. They should, you know, should have been telling, you know, the island residents, especially elderly and the most susceptible, you know, if you have elderly, you know, uncles, aunties, grandparents, whatever, you know, help them to get out into the sunshine every day, you know, get a little sun on their skin, get some vitamin D going.
I have a question, Carl.
Sure.
If you're out in the sun and you have an umbrella, does that still count? I notice, I suspect that per capita we sell more umbrellas on Guam than any place else in the world.
Well, if you go to the Philippines, that is very common. If you talk to Filipinos, you know, that have lived in the Philippines for a long time, you do see a lot of people walking around with their, I think it's called payong, if I remember correctly. And because it's kind of a big deal among some, especially women, they want to have that light complexion, you know. So white people are trying to get brown, and brown people are trying to stay white. We're never happy. But, yeah, in the Philippines, I don't know about Guam, but in the Philippines, it's very, very common to have an umbrella specifically for going out in the sunshine and trying to avoid the sun, which is kind of interesting.
And counterproductive, right, Carl?
Absolutely, yeah. You want to go out and get your free vitamin D. The price is right. It doesn't cost anything.
And as a general principle, endogenous vitamins are much better than exogenous vitamins, the ones that you get with your diet instead of from a pill bottle, or in this case, from the sun. You know, vitamin D is actually a hormone.
Yes.
And the body uses hormones in a lot of important processes, and as you say, it's free.
Yeah, and if anyone is interested in, you know, looking into it and is interested in adding it, you know, it's probably best to get your blood tested and see if you actually do have a vitamin D deficiency before you start adding it. And I've seen, you know, the sweet spot for vitamin D mentioned is like 1,000 IU, 2,000 IU. I've seen 4,000 IU. These are all by, you know, people who are, you know, scientists. So probably the best thing is get the blood tested and see if, you know, you do have a low vitamin D. And then one biochemist I saw recommended, you know, getting it periodically and tweaking it if it gets too high, because it does build up in fat tissue, and it can be, you know, it can cause some toxicity. I don't know what the symptoms are, but yeah, it can build up. Anyway, I just thought I'd toss that in there. Interesting little tidbits about vitamin D, the miracle vitamin.
Okay, Carl. Well, in addition to being the most dangerous man in the room, you are also a healer. So thanks for calling, Carl. Okay, and then I've got our Keith on the line too, but I got to take a break, Keith, and let's see, who else have I got on the line here, Jose? One other caller. Another Joe. So our Keith and another Joe. We're going to break for the home stretch, and I'll be dealing with you guys in the home stretch.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
Well, here we are at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. They're going to try running the Kentucky Derby this Saturday. A little late. It's supposed to be the first Saturday in May, but nothing goes on time anymore. So we're going to go from Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm going to come right back here, tailgaters. All you tailgaters, we're starting the home stretch here, and I'm going to start out the home stretch with our Keith, and then I'm going to chat with another Joe. Good afternoon, Keith.
Hi, Bob. I'll make this quick because I want to give another Joe time. I'm very pleased that you read the article that, what was it, from Breitbart, with the CDC admission regarding the fatalities on the Wuhan virus. And it was interesting how that has not made any airplay in the major media. None. And in fact, you would have thought with such a significant revelation that the CDC itself would have perhaps made a bigger deal out of it. I accept that perhaps they view that they've got egg on their face. Well, true to form, the New York Times in the past day or so came out with an op-ed having praised the CDC now for however many months of this crisis. Their op-ed essentially poo-pooed the CDC and instructed us not to believe them anymore. Curiously, and this may answer your question earlier about who benefits, the authors of this op-ed were from the Rockefeller Foundation, which I find sort of interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, just thought I'd pass that along for folks that have access to the New York Times and sort of see what... take a read. It's interesting.
You know, part of being a liberal is knowing how and when to flip-flop when the situation demands it. And if you can't do that, you're not going to last long as a liberal. Like all of a sudden now, the left has decided this urban rioting and arson is not such a good thing because it's not polling very well for Joe Biden. So now they're changing their tune.
Yeah, consistency's never been the strong suit, but I just found it interesting who the New York Times went to find their opposition research. I thought that was telling.
Very good.
Anyway, Have nice evening.
Thank you very much, Keith. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And then Joe's come and go, and we've got another Joe on the line right now. Right, another Joe?
Yeah, Bob. So before I forget, I want to say that word of mouth is that the early voting for the general election starts September 17, I think. So something to double check on that for everyone who would prefer not to get in long lines and get it over as quickly as possible.
Yeah, but I don't know if I want to run the risk. You know, my wife did the early voting for the primary, and it didn't count for anything. You know, she might as well have gone to the beauty shop for all.
I know, right?
Yeah,
I feel that way too. It's just, but what can I say? I mean, on that note, do you think there's going to be runoff elections that go up?
Say again?
Do you think there will be runoff elections because of this? There's going to be so many candidates in the same political party.
You know, it's really hard to read the elections this year because everybody is locked up and shut down so tight. So I don't get a chance to get out and do a lot of strategic listening like I might at Going to the Dead or other things like that. So I don't have a really good feeling for how it's going. I suspect that San Nicolas is stronger than what the Democrat establishment thinks he is. Obviously, the Democrat establishment probably would rather see Will Castro in Washington than another 2 years of Michael San Nicolas, and rightfully so, because Will is probably a better Democrat than San Nicolas is. So, I think that it could be a real horse race between Robert and San Nicolas. And then, of course, with Castro in there, you have to have a majority in order to avoid the runoff. So, just one shy vote, that one person that voted for Castro instead of the other two, could cause the runoff. And, I'm always interested in looking at the what ifs. And suppose there is a runoff. How does that sort out? How would the Republicans, because the Republicans would be the key to the victory in a runoff election, because you'd have to figure the Democrats are about evenly split. So it'll be Republican votes that determine who goes to Washington.
So the best strategy for Republicans is to toe the party line. Everyone vote Republican on the Republican side. That's the best strategy then.
You think that's the party line?
I'm not sure if, in other words, don't crossover vote. Just vote straight Republican. Do you think that's the best strategy for the Republican Party?
Well, if you wanted to be scientific about it, you'd figure which one is in the lead, and you throw all your votes to the other candidate to try to force that runoff. If you're playing the political game, which is what political parties do, right?
But overall, they usually want the majority. So in the calculus, let's say, okay. So I guess you made your point. But do you have any other instincts to be cautious about with regards to this election, or it's definitely not? Would you compare it to other years where they said there were 2 other years when they canceled the primary? Would you compare it to those years, or not so much because of the pandemic?
I read in the paper that it happened. I was here when it happened. I don't remember anything about it at all. Because what ordinarily happens in the later years now, the parties have a hard time.
Sorry?
Do you want me to answer your dog?
No, I apologize. Yeah, it's really loud background noise. I'm trying to walk away from it.
Oh, okay. Ordinarily, the parties have a hard time rounding up 15 people to run for office. So the senatorial primary tends to become a non-issue, and all of the attention is directed either to the gubernatorial or the Washington rep. But with the gubernatorial, ordinarily, there isn't a hotly contested primary unless Carl Gutierrez is a candidate. But anyhow, I don't have a recollection of those years when the primary was canceled. I do remember the year that the general election was moved from a Tuesday to a Saturday because of a typhoon. I don't remember the name of the typhoon. That was the year that Robert ran against Ben Blas and beat Ben Blas. And my analysis was that had the election taken place on Tuesday, Ben would have won. But when the people saw that Bill Clinton was elected president, it may have caused enough people to switch votes saying, well, if we got a Democrat president, we ought to send a Democrat to Washington. Got to go, another Joe. Good talking to you.
All right, take care. Come up.
See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Calling for an end to the violence. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. In a visit Tuesday to Kenosha, Wisconsin.
President Trump meeting with law enforcement and demanded law and order.
Violent mobs demolished or damaged at least 25